Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is the second of a series of 4 on our sanitation scaling pathways, and we're happy to welcome you. Before I get started, I'd like to hand over right away to Anton from the Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, who will give us an official introduction and warm welcome. Anton, please.
Thanks very much, Ali, and hope you can all hear me well. Yes, so my name is Anton. I'm from the UN Sanitation Hygiene Fund. So SHF is a fund focusing on market-based solutions in sanitation, hygiene, and menstrual health. And of course, this SANA program is one of our main programs, especially focusing on SMEs in Africa. We're very excited about this work that Cewas has done in terms of the scaling blueprints. So looking forward to this and the coming workshops. Thank you, Aline, and welcome everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Anton. And hello, everyone from my side. My name is Aline from Cewas, and we are the implementing organization of the SANA program in cooperation with SHF. And we are an organization that is supporting WASH enterprises conquer markets and impact. And in that sense, the SANA program is one of our flagship programs currently, under which we're able to support companies directly, but we are also developing knowledge products. And the scaling pathways on selected sanitation business models are such a knowledge product that we developed in cooperation and with a lot of support and feedback from entrepreneurs and experts, partially in this room as well. So this has been the work of last year, and we are now taking this out into a series of webinars because we want to share the insights, and of course we want to keep getting feedback as we see those a bit more as living documents than really fixed blueprints. And you can see here that we have already run one webinar on container-based sanitation. Today's webinar is on emptying and transport, and we have 2 upcoming webinars on decentralized treatment and reuse business models. So what we're looking at with these scaling pathways is a bit of a dissection of these very important business models in sanitation, where we're looking at the characteristics of what are really the essential parameters, indicators, in terms of operation, in terms of financials, in terms of impact that make such a business succeed, and how does the growth and scale-up journey actually look like. And we're happy to discuss this now with you in the next 45 minutes. This webinar is short and sweet, and my colleague Yannick promised last time that we're going to make it in 45 minutes, so that's the goal for today. But we'll try to fill it with a lot of content and discussion, and hopefully in the end we also have a bit of room for questions from you, the audience. I'm happy that I'm not alone today, and of course Anton is here, which we're glad about, and we have 2 experts / entrepreneurs joining. We have Abubaker, the CEO of Brilliant Sanitation, and we have Harry, the WASH specialist and technical lead from WSUP, who are joining us today and are gonna be ready to give more insights and deep dives into some of the very typical indicators and characteristics of an emptying and transport business. Abubaker, would you like to introduce yourself and Brilliant Sanitation?
Yes, hello everyone. It's good evening to you all here from Kampala, Uganda. My name is Semukoteka Abubakar. I'm the CEO of Brilliant Sanitation Uganda Limited, based here in Kampala, Uganda, Masaka City, that is going to Western region, and also Fort Portal region, with 3 branches currently operated under Brilliant Sanitation Management. Back to you, Alain.
Thank you, Abubaker. We're happy to hear more about you. That was short but nice, and feel free to elaborate later a bit more about your work. Thank you. Harry, over to you. An introduction to yourself and WSUP.
Thank you, Aline, and good morning, afternoon, evening, from wherever you're joining us from. Yeah, my name is Harry Njung'e. I work for Water and Sanitation for Urban Populations. We work at the intersection of government, utilities, and also the private enterprises. And that's where we have built our expertise, really translating policy into practice. And specifically around sanitation, we have worked along the whole ecosystem, from working with governments, local governments, working with utilities, and also the enterprises to strengthen the sanitation market, and also to strengthen the whole ecosystem towards ensuring that we are able to still achieve safe sanitation using the different service delivery models, be it seaward systems, non-seaward sanitation systems. And I'm glad to join this discussion, as we all know that sanitation is a public good, and yeah, that's the elephant in the room. But we all know that we can still make this work, and we are here just to discuss and explore how, and give lessons and experiences on how we have been able to implement in our different contexts. Yeah, thank you. Back to you, Aline.
Thank you so much, Harry. And also thanks for mentioning your last point, which is important to mention. When we developed the scaling pathways, we looked at different geographies. We looked at markets and business cases in Kenya, in Uganda, in Rwanda, but also in West Africa, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Senegal, in Ghana. And of course, there isn't just one context and one version of that. So we need to keep that in mind. I think with the discussion and the context today, we'll have a bit more of the East African focus. But if you look and read more about the scaling blueprints, you will see that examples are going beyond those geographies. Now, let's get started with the fundamentals of an emptying and transport business model. And I think what is important to understand is that this is really a service that is the backbone of the sanitation service chain, especially in contexts in cities and countries where we don't have predominantly sewer networks, but where people, institutions in urban and peri-urban areas depend on a service that helps collect fecal sludge from on-site systems, pit latrines, septic tanks, and transport it safely to treatment locations. And that's, I think, quite a common situation. I think the countries we're looking at, we have partially 70 to 90% of people depending on such services. And what we see is that the models of emptying and transport services are ranging a lot in terms of size, but also in terms of level of mechanization. And we'll look into the varieties of that later, but if we categorize the basics, I think we can see on a very small scale, of course, there's manual emptying, which is typically informal. And then we have semi-mechanized emptying, where service providers are using technologies, equipments of pumps, of small vacuum systems, portable, to empty the on-site systems, and then use, for example, barrels to move the sludge to trucks and other small vehicles, and then to treatment sites. And then we have also, of course, the larger scale of mechanized emptying with medium or large vacuum trucks, where it's really about volume of sludge being removed, transported, and then put for treatment. Now, you can see that we are really talking about the essence of a waste business, where it's about moving thick sludge, heavy material from A to B. And this is really all about logistics. It's about the trucks, it's about the equipments you have, it's about the infrastructure that you deal with in terms of roads, in terms of access to treatment infrastructure. And it's about trying to run operations as efficiently as you can, but also keeping in mind that you are operating in a context where, of course, you have quite low prices offered, for example, by informal service providers, where you have a lot of sensitivity in terms of ability and willingness to pay from potential clients. So not an easy business to build and scale. When we look at revenues, typically this business is built on customer fees that are paying for volume. We're looking at pricing structure later on again with more detail, but those can be households, these can be commercial sectors, buildings, institutions that are paying for the desludging services. What we can see in reality is that a lot of emptying and transport business would actually combine or add additional services to the emptying, which could be in the field of toilet construction. It could be other type of contracting work, maintenance, renovation. It could actually be other type of solid waste streams that are being managed. It could also be moving up to services along the sanitation value chain, meaning looking into treatment sites, operations, and others. This is just the first overview, but I think we'll see a few more actual examples in a few minutes. Now, the added value of such type of businesses are, of course, that they are an important alternative to centralized sewer systems where access to such investments is not easy, and where sewer systems might also not be the feasible infrastructure to put in place, and where such services are actually what allows the sanitation chain to stay intact, meaning that we are going beyond the containment and we're able to, if it's a professional and hygienic service, to safely collect and transport the sludge for treatment. And this actually allows or means a direct, strong link to SDG 6.2 in terms of access to safe sanitation. Beyond that, we are, of course, also looking at SDG 6.3 in terms of the quality of water. If such services are not available, and if there's no sewer network, and if there are high water tables, and we're looking at practices of illegal dumping or of overflows or leakages, we have, of course, a high pollution risk for environment and public health. And in terms of direct benefits, we are looking at a service that, of course, helps to maintain the on-site sanitation systems properly functioning by being emptied, by being cleaned and maintained. Now, when we build the sanitation pathways, the scaling pathways, what we really wanted to do is to understand how do these businesses scale over time? How can they grow from a micro or small business to a larger business with a higher contribution to impact and to the market? And what is important to understand is that this is not a typical startup journey that begins with a business that prototypes and then pilots and then validates the business model and then raise a lot of finance. I think what we see here is that we have the majority of such businesses operating usually at a small to medium scale, rather small scale, and very few are actually moving up into a larger scale-up operations. And therefore, we have built the scaling pathways not in a linear way, but we actually pointed out different scaling ways that we have seen either evidence for, or we see businesses are trying to go that route. And that's what I'm trying to show you now in a bit. Now, if we look at the very small or early scale, we're looking at what we can call initiation of an emptying and transport business. And then this is something that, can start with a one vehicle type of operation, which doesn't really take too much capital, because oftentimes these vehicles are leased or second-hand. So it's not that you need to start this business already with 30K USD, for example, but this can be quite a small upfront budget to actually get operational, where it's all about beginning to run services, which could be semi-mechanized, mechanized. Of course, here we're looking at professional licensed type of businesses, and where at this level of scale, the whole goal is to try to cover direct expenses. And at this level, of course, there aren't many other fixed or overhead expenses, but you're trying really to cover the operational expenses of the labor of the trucks, with a few hundred paying clients, typically households at that level. And this is something that can then evolve in a micro business, which surprisingly is about adding vehicles or equipment. So we're now looking maybe at a business that has 2 vehicles. And if it starts getting into the 2 emptying services a day, this is actually the point where it can become a bit profitable. At the same time, of course, when you have 2 vehicles, you need to start looking a bit more into training. You are looking at how to make sure you're reaching a few more customers. You're trying to improve your efficiency a bit. So you will also have to start covering a bit more cost than in the beginning. From there, you move to the small business. So we're still at a small scale. But this is, I think, where most of the emptying businesses would fall into that type of category, and where there's a threshold where most of them will not scale beyond. So that means a business that operates with a couple of trucks, where the ambition is to reach a gross margin of around 30 to 40% per service per job done, where you now start looking at servicing not only households, but also institutional clients, which can be a bit more lucrative long-term contracts, and where services can reach for up to 30,000 people. Now, at that level, of course, there is also already some brand awareness of that business. It needs to start investing in marketing. It needs to start looking into route optimization. So we need to start investing into the fleet itself. So the business becomes more cost intensive. And this is then where the balance of efficiency, profitability gets very critical. Now, let's look at what could happen beyond that, the scaling pathways that we looked at and that we see are being explored. So we are seeing one pathway that looks into geographic expansion. So that means actually running services for emptying and transport across several cities, which means opening new branches, because it's not feasible to move a truck usually beyond cities. And where maybe in smaller cities, you are then trying to really capture a larger market share, where you start perhaps mixing semi-mechanized and mechanized services to be able to speak to different customer segments and manage access and efficiency of different communities. And beyond that, there is another pathway which could, of course, be combined. It's not that it's necessarily just one or the other, where a sanitation business would look at the next level or the next stage in the sanitation chain and would consider actually investing or operating a treatment site. for fecal sludge, which means that maybe there's a lack of access to treatment facilities that could spark that idea, which can be a key barrier to scale by itself, and where a business would then try to see how to really maximize emptying in a certain area and make best use of the treatment site, possibly also charging dumping fees from other emptiers or going into reuse products. I leave that topic for the next webinars though. Government partnerships are usually very essential for such a business model, and we'll look into that potentially a bit later again. Now, there is one more model I want to highlight here, which perhaps is a bit more typical to find in West Africa, where we see service providers running a really large fleet of trucks, multiple trucks across different large cities, capturing a big market share, really focusing on high level of mechanization, so not doing semi-mechanized or smaller scale services anymore, and trying to really push by volume the net margins they can be working with. Now, all of that you can read and study in more detail if you want to in the actual document itself. There's the QR code here, we'll show it later again, but just to show you that there is more to explore. Now, I would like to come to the part where we'll also dive into discussions. Now, for the scaling pathways, we looked at what are the operational commercial impact indicators, parameters that are interesting to analyze. And of course, what you see here on the screen is not holistic in a sense that it covers everything a business should look at, but it is, I think these are interesting discussion points. You already saw now that we have been talking about the mechanization level itself quite a bit, which determines a lot the efficiency, the profitability, the scale-up potential. So that's one that we're gonna talk about. We're looking at the service delivery. The service delivery here, of course, this is all about how much volume can we empty and how much time. These are 2-3 different KPIs to look at. The factor of the access and distance to treatment sites is very crucial as well. And the fleet status and use is another one that is quite linked to service delivery. On the financial aspects, we'll look into pricing, we'll look into revenue and net profit per truck, and we'll look into the gross margin per job. So that's an overview. Let me get started on the first one. You already saw in the 3 scale-up pathways that I highlighted that, yeah, the mechanization level matters a lot. If we're looking at full mechanization, large trucks that can transport 10 to 20 cubic meters at once, of course, that's most efficient, but it also comes with a high capital requirement, and it also comes with infrastructure needs. Where not, all contexts are suitable to move around with large trucks. Now, when we looked at business cases, we have examples where, for example, in a scale-up journey of, let's say, 10 years of building an emptying and transport business, the area or the part of the services from this business that is mechanized is actually increasing, and the semi-mechanized barrel-based emptying declines. But we still see a mix of both type of semi-mechanized and mechanized services, even at a larger scale. And this can also be explained, that some communities, some areas that are hard to reach can only be serviced with semi-mechanized methods. And I mentioned a few before, the pit vac, the poo-poo pump, the gulper can be systems technologies that are then helpful to actually still be able to reach certain populations, certain neighborhoods, which is an aspect of inclusion, of impact. But this is where a mixed fleet is probably at that fine balance of efficiency, accessibility, and operating costs. Now I stop here and I hand over to Anton. And I'd like you to feel free to ask the first question that comes to your mind to our entrepreneur and expert on perhaps these scaling pathways that I just presented.
Thank you, Ali. Very interesting insights. Yeah, I would be interested to learn about ways to scale the business. So starting with the first question of what is the most realistic way for an emptying and transport business to scale in Kenya and Uganda? And perhaps we can start with Abubaker first. Please, Abubaker.
Thanks, Anton, for the question. Back to you, Alain, regarding my introduction. I'm running a business, Brilliant Sanitation, with all technologies. We are doing both mechanical and semi-mechanical currently, because we found that we shouldn't be like hiring trucks on the sides when we are performing our services. Then back to Anthony's question, the question, the reality way of running a sanitation business, the business should be before, when you're setting a business, first of all is to choose the location where you have to be operating, because you find that you have to be based in a community you're willing to serve. This food portal. It isn't that we needed or
Abubaker? I think we have a bit of an internet lag.
Yes, you don't hear me?
We lost you. Can you just repeat the last 30 seconds?
Okay, I was saying that the location matters in setting up a the sanitation business, because when you're located very many kilometers from where the treatment plant is, that means you are going to be incurring a lot of costs. The operation costs are going to be very, very high. So you have to be based around where the treatment plant is, and to be based in the community. Then secondly, should be in management, in the management team. We find that our work, like toilet emptying, before people were just seeing it as an illiterate or the other back work. So only those who were employed in sanitation business were those who never went to school. Now, we now see that many things we do as a business should be managed by those who went to universities and have degrees and PhDs and other things. So we should shift from the other thinking way to now on the way of handling the proper business. Back to you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abubaker. Harry, anything you want to add from the perspective you've seen at WSUP?
Yeah, thanks, Anton. Yeah, just to build on what Abubaker mentioned and more, I think just to build on the service, I think one of the critical things, looking at the Kenyan and Ugandan market, which are similar in terms of characteristics, we realize that we have ideally the low income settlements, but also the high end settlements. And I think one of the realistic pathways that I would think of is having more of the semi-mechanized and the mechanized way, that you find some of the low-income areas. One of the challenges is solid waste, and you find it becomes very expensive and very difficult to be able to provide this service using a normal vacuum truck. And so you find then here the poo pump will be most effective at this point. But also, if you look at the vacuum truck, then because you're looking at the time and the cost per job, then the vacuum truck would be better. Because what happens, because they empty the solid waste, then they are able now to suck out now the liquid. And so having a combination of this ensures that you have a complete service provided, but ensuring that you're also able to really solve the challenge. Another thing now from the market perspective would be around having a connection with the utility. You realize that working within a regulated environment, and that's one of the things that we have been trying to do to really move some of the very manual pit emptiers into more of a professionalized way of doing service and getting them into regulation. Then that means that they have access to a wider market, they have access to more information to be able also to position their business for scale. Yeah. Back to you, Anton.
Thank you very much, Harry. Aline, I think we can move on to next section with these answers.
Yes, we can do so. And I think Abubaker and Harry both reminded me of discussions we had quite a while ago on the trade-off between trying to maximize efficiency and volume and profitability versus being able to service certain communities also with sometimes less efficient methods. So thank you for raising that point. And I'll move on to the more service delivery related KPIs. And I think in the discussions with the entrepreneurs when we built the scaling pathways, definitely we had discussions and feedbacks on that. So happy if you still have other points, or if you feel some of these benchmarks are maybe not ideal, because those are really average benchmarks one can use and think of. So if we look at service delivery, of course, the mechanization level is again a key factor, and so is the infrastructure situation itself, and so is the actual condition or access of the on-site system that is being emptied. But these are three factors one can look at. One is the actual volume of sludge that are being emptied per job. And here, of course, the volume is different if we're looking at semi-mechanized services, where it's more of 1 to 3 cubic meter per job, versus mechanized services where we can talk of 4 to 10 cubic meter per jobs. And that, of course, directly correlates also to how many jobs can be completed daily and the time they take. So if we're looking at semi-mechanized emptying, I think I mentioned before, things become interesting when we can run at least 2 or more a day. Again, very much depending on the condition of access of the on-site system, of the technology we have at hand, of how much waste is in the pits that you are emptying. But and of course also on the truck capacity and distance to treatment plant. The time per job ranges here from semi-mechanized of 2 to 5 hours. Again, the volume, the thickness, the time for preparation and cleaning of the site, the equipment, and then the mechanized services, 1 to 2 hours on average. Now, let me also quickly show these other two KPIs. I think, Abubaker, you already mentioned how crucial the location is, and I think that relates directly to the distance of the emptying service to the treatment site that you need to consider. And I think when we collected references, the ideal distance was below 10 kilometers between emptying location and treatment site. But of course, time and resources can differ based on the conditions of the road, based on traffic, etc. So it cannot just be a plug and play number here. However, what I think was a common agreement that when the distance is too high, then basically the operational costs are becoming not feasible anymore. The cost of fuel and time that it takes to empty, or if the houses or the places you're servicing are too scattered, then also here you don't have an optimized route for collection and transport to the treatment site. Of course, the quality of the fleet and the equipment is critical. On one hand, the downtime or the maintenance time and cost could be high if you are avoiding or if you're not able to invest in new or high quality trucks. But beyond that, of course, just with the way you operate, plan your routes and run the business, they should have a very high use percentage to actually manage efficiency. Now, on those more operational aspects, Anton, what from a support and funder perspective would be your questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Aline. Yeah, I would be interested to learn about what's driving efficiency in the business. Looking at what is the biggest drivers for efficiency in the business so far, and perhaps looking into the future as well. Though Harry is not running a business, perhaps Harry, you can start this time in case you have insights on this, and then Abubaker can continue.
Yeah, thanks, Anton, for that. Yeah, really looking at experience working with the enterprises. One of the things that I have seen that comes out is, of course, that issue of data, availability of data to be able to really think about more of having scheduled services to customers, maybe through demand aggregation, and then you can get into an area and you do not have just to empty one household, then you can be able to empty quite a number of households, and you're able to get more benefit from emptying those households, and also really exploring a mixture of the customer base, looking at the different clientele. You have the households, but also looking at having more institutional customers. Then they're able to balance out in terms of the revenue. One of the other challenges, and also one of the drivers for efficiency, would also to work around regulation and really enforcement. Having strong regulation within the city or the towns then ensures that you are able to weed out competition, mainly from informal emptiers, because most of these manual emptiers, in effect, they charge less because they aren't strict enforcement and compliance requirements, and so they tend to charge less. And also this undercuts the more formal service providers. And also, so that's why also at the enabling environment front, it's important to have a strong regulation that ensures that everybody, all the enterprises, are within a regulated environment and they are compliant. And that in effect translates to the business. And now connecting that to the availability of data, maybe at the utility level, and working with the utility, then they have access to a market that is more uniform. The standard and the service is more uniform, and this ensures that the business is more predictable in terms of providing the service, in terms of the customers, the revenue, as we also work around ensuring optimization of costs. Yeah.
Thanks, Harry. And Abubaker, anything to add from from the business perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Anton. I'm talking since one of the prominent sanitation providers on the continent. I'll just pose just three points here. One is to embrace the digital platform, whereby things can run smoothly in or in carrying out the operations. Then you find that some of us have multiple branches, meaning if at all you don't have the digital platform to access the data within the from the operation and finance, then you find it hard. So efficiently, now you have to adopt this platform, correcting the M&E, the finance, the modern tools are there, so you can achieve more in running a sanitation business. Then you can talk about the adoption of modern technology, not to operate like as the casual laborers, but you have to adopt the technology as Alain talked about, like popo pumps, machines, pit vac, and other things, as added to the vacuum trucks already known, so that you can be able to serve multiple clients in just a single day. Then lastly, you can talk about the team capacity building within the team, so that you'll be able to serve the clients today and tomorrow, to see that whoever you served you can receive referrals, and also to be able to work with the government, because government can't work with you when you provide a substandard service. Thank you. Back to you, Anton.
Thanks very much for the insights. Aline, since I know we are kind of short on time, so I'm turning it over to you.
Yes, I think we have one more KPI section to go, but maybe I quickly try to integrate the questions from the chat. Harry, I'm reading the question to you. Perhaps you can help answer on that. It's on Grace, who works on skill development in Tibet, and would like to hear what type of skills we think are needed to support drive SMEs in this particular sanitation field.
Great. Thanks, Grace, for that question. If you look at the sanitation space, or rather the market, especially the emptying and transport, we really have a lot of on the job or learning on the job, where you have manual pit emptiers getting into the business and really starting off. Technologies come like the poo pump, getting to learn, and this is a skill that has been built on over time. My thinking would be really collaboration with the Tibet institutions around how do we make these skills recognizable, maybe through recognition of prior learning, then really having more certifications around maybe manual pit emptying or vacuum truck operators. Then this ensures that this level of skill is acceptable, and also is able to attract more people to be able to do this skill more professionally. And I think there is an opportunity for collaboration, especially with TVET institutions, to really build a curriculum or get this skill or workers to be able to have more of a professional kind of certification, which brings acceptability even for the business, and also creates a stronger market with skilled workforce here.
Great. Thank you, Harry. I'll try to now finish within the next 5 minutes. I hope that is acceptable for everyone. I think we want to go through one more slide and just a few more questions. I try to also take one or two more up from the chat. So we're looking at the financing parameters, and one interesting aspect definitely is pricing, which is depending on volume, but I think then there are also other factors coming in terms of time, distance, certain conditions on site, and obviously pricing changes when we look at more long-term institutional contracts versus the more regular households clients. Here, a couple of benchmarks that you see have huge variations of numbers that we got from different countries. Another interesting KPI to look at is the revenue per truck. So here we're looking at a vacuum truck that could look at a revenue generation of 36,000 USD per year if operated well, and this could be a target of or reach or link to a target of 15 to 20% net profit per truck for more mechanized emptiers, which is in our sectors not at all a bad target, but rather an ambitious one. And if we look at the gross margin per job, so basically the revenue per job minus the operational costs, this is something that of course should increase during the scale-up pathway of such a business, where it starts with 30 to 50%, but it should reach higher, especially as the costs that Abubaker was talking about, that you need to start investing internally, are also increasing. You need to start depreciating your assets. And for mechanized service, that's also an interesting number to keep in mind, that the biggest, highest expense for operations is oftentimes the fuel, which is why the KPI on the distance to treatment site and the route optimization is so critical, because it can easily reach 30 to 50% of the total costs. Now, this is just a very quick highlight of a couple of benchmarks, but of course, when it comes to the financing, to investments for such businesses that obviously need capital, especially if they want to scale and build a fleet and build branches and scale operations, there are many questions. Anton, which one can you pick in the short time we have left?
Perhaps one pretty quick, hopefully, would be too interesting to hear from point of view. In practice, how do you decide at what price level do you sell? Abubaker, do you want to go ahead this time first?
Regarding the prices, Alain, I think, has briefly talked about it. First is the volume to be collected from a client. Once you have about 10 trips, you receive a certain discount at least, as compared to one with just one trip. Then regarding also the distance, because we first calculate how long are we going to drive from our office to your site. Can we be able to come back and serve more clients? No. So that means you have to be charged the equivalent money we should collect from a whole day without serving other people. So that determines also the type of the facility, the facility type, and the user practices determines, because your pit could be a VIP and it should be emptied by a vacuum truck, but because of the user's habits, you only have to receive the semi-mechanical, which is far high priced. So the user and the type of the pit determines also the price. Thank you.
Harry, any final quick ones to add on this one?
Yeah, maybe just to add on Abubakar, what I've also seen, also based on the experience in Kenya, is also some of these enterprises are limited in terms of pricing based due to the competition. You find your competitor is charging a certain price, then you are limited to charge within that price, because then this means that if you charge higher, then you do not have access to the customers. And so, and of course, other drivers that are related to cost of fuel and all that. And that has really been a bit of an inhibitor in terms of being able to scale and grow, because then there is huge competition from informal service providers and also not really a very good regulated pricing mechanism due to a fragmented kind of ecosystem. And so I think that's where the utility also plays a role, not really dictating the price, but really through like having contracting arrangements and also zoning that could ensure that you're able to also determine the pricing around the different zones and ensuring that the businesses, the enterprises are able to meet the cost of service and at least make some profit. Yeah. Then back to you, Anton.
Great. Thank you so much, Harry. Anton, are you okay if we take one more question from the chat? One last one?
Absolutely. I'm okay with everything, so it's up to you.
I feel bad we
decide,
hardly managed to tackle them. Okay, great. Abubaker, I'm reading this one to you from Calvin's on what has been your experience working with the regulatory environment. I think you invested from the very beginning in partnerships with the government. Can you explain a bit more about it in 1 minute?
Okay, thanks for the question. Working with regulators, regulatory bodies is really easing our operations. I'll just bring a case in 2019. The case Kampala Capital City Authority assigned an ordinance that we practicing the semi-mechanical system of emptying. You're not allowed to hire a truck from a pickup stage, then you transport the sludge, then you return the pickup truck to the stage. That means once you return the pickup to the stage, it is going to transport tomatoes, cabbage, and other things. So now they say if the truck is employed or deployed in emptying, it shouldn't return. But by then, we didn't have any truck owned by Brilliant Sanitation. What we had to do is to work with closely with KCCA and also Water for People on Ground. They recommended us to a bank. We got a loan, bought a truck. So our relationship since start is really great on our side. Then talk about National Water and Sewage Corporation here managing sewage. Our working together in Kampala Masaka Fort Portal is really they are really supporting us, because if at all we are not having that in hand together with them, we shouldn't be having anywhere to dump. But going to Masaka and Fort Portal, we just only used the papers we have, allowing us to dump in Kampala. The papers we just deployed in Masaka and Fort Portal allowed us to dump at their treatment plant. So on our regulators to manage the business, you have to be in good hands with them, and also they always do the referrals, because some clients just go to National or KCCA for the job, and remember, these people do not have the capacity to manage the sewage. So many times they just call Brilliant Sanitation to carry out such services.
Thank you, Abubaker. Those were very practical examples, and I'm sure there's a lot more everyone could ask you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I think, or I'm sure if there are more questions, you're probably happy to be in touch or share emails. So I encourage everyone to stay with us also for the next webinars on decentralized treatment and on reuse. I want to thank you for your patience to go a bit overboard, but I think it was worth the time. I want to thank Anton from SHF to always be supportive and help us in these processes and facilitation and anything needed. And of course, Abubaker and Harry for sharing so openly what you know and are always there to work together to figure out how we can best work as wash businesses and supporters in this field. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.